Okay. Now, there are other types of suspensive or resolutory conditions. They could either be potestative, casual, mixed, or impossible. So what is a potestative, suspensive, or resolutory condition? So potestative is one condition, is a condition that depends upon the will of the debtor or the will of the creditor. Example, D promised to pay C 50,000 pesos if C will vacate from his house. So the obligation here is to give C 50,000 pesos, and the condition is if C will vacate from his house. So this vacating the house depends upon the will of C, who is the creditor. Is this valid? The answer is yes. On the other hand, casual condition depends upon a chance, like lottery, hazard, or will of a third person. Example of this is when D promised to pay C 50,000 pesos if C can survive the Amazon jungle for 30 days. So the obligation here is for D to pay C 50,000 pesos. And the condition is if C can survive the Amazon jungle for 30 days. So this is dependent on the chance of C to survive, or it is hazardous as well, chance or hazard. Is this obligation valid? The answer is yes. The third kind, which is mixed. This is a condition which depends partly on the will of the debtor or creditor, and partly on chance and will of a third person. So I have emphasized the word "and" here because they should all be present. So partly will of the debtor or partly will of the creditor plus partly chance and will of a third person. So all of this must be present. And the last kind of suspensive resolutory condition is impossible. This condition is contrary to law, or meaning against the law, good morals, or public policy. Do you know what is a public policy? Now, public policies are the policies of the state. And every law enacted by the state, there are policies that the state pronounced. No? It is indicated in the law. So effects of various suspensive conditions on obligations. Now, in potestative, which is dependent on the sole will of the debtor, and impossible, which is contrary to law, good morals, or public policy, this type of obligation, if it is suspensive, then it is void. No? They are void. I'm sorry. Both obligation and the condition are void. But if the condition, if the obligation is already pre-existing or has already exist before the conditions were set, then the obligation shall remain valid and the court may fix the period for paying the debt. So this is the remedy of the creditor. So meaning the creditor can go to court, so the court may fix the period for the debtor to pay the debt. In case the condition is potestative, this time dependent on the sole will of the creditor. The last time it's dependent on the sole will of the debtor. So if it is the creditor, or if it is casual or mixed, then the obligation and the condition are valid. By the way, void means no effect, meaning it does not have any legal effect. That is what void means. Valid, it has effects. On the other hand, there are two other suspensive conditions, which are namely positive or negative. Positive suspensive condition, example of this is when D promised to give C 50,000 pesos if C gets married before December 31, 2020. So meaning he will give C 50,000 and provided that C will get married before December 31, 2020. So if ever on January 1, 2021, C is still single, then the obligation is extinguished because it is improbable to happen. Negative suspensive condition, on the other hand, an example of this is when D promised to refund C's entire school tuition if C is not married at the end of 2020. So if ever on January 1, 2021, C is still unmarried, then the obligation becomes due and demandable. So different effects. How about retroactive effect of conditional obligation to give? So in suspensive condition, the creditor has the right to demand fulfillment obligation from the debtor upon the happening of the event. And it will have retro effect if the debtor promises or promised to deliver the same object to two creditors, both subject to a suspensive condition, to suspensive conditions. There should be no A here. The first creditor has a better right over the second creditor, even if the condition of the first creditor is not yet fulfilled. Ergo, or hence, the first creditor may institute an action in order to preserve his right, such as annotating a notice of pending litigation on the title of the property. This is also known as notice of lis pendens. Or filing an adverse claim with the Register of Deeds or the assessor where the property is located. Or file a court action to stop delivery of the object to the second creditor. But what if the property has already been delivered by the debtor to the second creditor? Will the creditor attain real right over the property? It depends, no? The answer is yes, if he is in good faith. What is real right? Real right is one that attaches to the property, meaning the person who attains possession of the property will have right of ownership, right to use, or right to mortgage or pledge the property. Does not really pertain to real property, but it is something that is attached to the property, such as ownership. What if the second creditor was in bad faith? What is bad faith? Oh, by the way, the remedy of the first creditor in the case of the second creditor who is in good faith is only to file a claim for damages against the debtor. So the debtor will then be ordered to pay for damages if found guilty. Then if the second buyer is in bad faith, what is bad faith? It means that the person knows or has knowledge that there was already a first buyer, but still insisted to buy the same property from the debtor. So meaning he is in connivance with the debtor in committing the fraud. So in this case, the buyer is in bad faith, then the second creditor, upon delivery of the object, does not acquire any legal right over the property. So in this case, the first creditor may demand delivery or can demand delivery over the thing, provided he will file such claim in court. So other types of obligations, let's proceed according to parties liable. Unilateral, meaning there's only one party who is bound to deliver or perform. So example of this would be May promise to give Juan a dog. So only May is bound to deliver the dog to Juan. Only one debtor. Only one person who is bound to deliver. So let's proceed. Reciprocal or bilateral. In this case, both parties are either passive or active subject, meaning both of them are either debtors or creditors to each other. What is an example? In a contract of sale, there is a seller and a buyer. Now both the seller is bound to deliver the object. So he's bound to perform. While the buyer is also bound to deliver the payment. So they are both obligated. So both persons are obligated. So if the seller has already delivered the object, then he can demand from the buyer payment. So at the same time, he's also the obligor and the creditor. Or if the buyer has already delivered the payment, then he can demand from the seller. He becomes the creditor of the seller upon payment.